Hello all, my name is Ankush Agnihotri. Today we will talk about the RESTful APIs. Before we start, please subscribe the channel and hit the bell icon to get the latest notification. So let's start. REST API is an application programming interface which can be used by the multiple clients, or you can say apps, to communicate with the server. REST API is a kind of web service which store and retrieve the necessary data for your application in a convenient format, for example JSON or XML or plain text. It provides great flexibility to the developer since it doesn't need any dependent code libraries to access the web service, as REST APIs are stateless. So let's try to understand the REST API via an example. So among us the various protocols supported by the REST APIs, the common one is the HTTP. When a request is sent from the client using a HTTP request, a correspondingly response is sent back from the server using the HTTP response. The most widely used or readable formats supported for the request and the responses are JSON, JavaScript object notification, and XML, extensible markable language. REST was created by the computer scientist Roy Fielding. So let's understand what are the various methods that REST provides. REST basically provides us the 5 kind of formats, that is the get, post, put, patch and delete. Get is used for retrieving most of the data from the database or the server. Post, when we want to create or insert some new record into our database. Patch is used when we want to modify a whole new record, or basically you want to replace an entire record. And patch is used to modify a part of the existing record. It doesn't replace the whole record, it only replaces a patch of it. And delete method is used to delete a record. So let's try to understand this whole diagram using a common example. So we know mothers never get enough rest after give birth to a newborn baby. So let's try to understand with help of that what is REST APIs. Among us the excessive demand by a newborn baby, diapering takes the first place on the leadership board. A mother wants everything best for his baby, so it's obvious mother choose the best diaper for her baby. So she goes to the shopping website, let's assume a Flipkart. This is your Flipkart application, you are accessing it via your mobile, either your tablet or your from computer. So whenever mother searches for the diaper, this sends a HTTP request to the server and get the list of all your diapers. So the request for getting all the diapers is performed with the help of get. And when mother selects a diaper and add it and order it to the Flipkart, then it will be performed using the post operation, because basically she wants to insert a new record into the server, so it will be performed using the post request. Now after a certain period of time the diaper size is changed, mother wants to change its size from newborn to the 1 year, then this request will be performed via patch, because basically we want to update a patch of record, we are not replacing a whole record. And after a certain period of time mother thinks she need to change a diaper brand, so she need to find a new request or new diaper. So again she changed the diaper brand and request for it. That request will be performed by the put request, because basically we want to update some existing record. And finally when the mother succeeded to teach his children how to sit on the potty bot, then she doesn't need a diaper, then she perform a delete request using the delete HTTP method, that will be delete a record into our server. So let's do analysis on this, how this calls has been done from client to the server. So you can see REST API is a bridge between the client and the server which help us to communicate. It sends these 5 kind of messages in the HTTP request and send back the response into the JSON, XML, HTML or plain text, the format that you want to see on your apps, or you can say the websites. So let's start on the code side how we can develop RESTful APIs. Before we start, we need to be some prerequisite for this. So what are those? First one is the Visual Studio 2022 that I am using. Next one is the .NET Core. ASP.NET Core is the new version of the ASP.NET developed by the Microsoft. It is an open source framework for developing web application and APIs, and it can be run on Windows, Mac or Linux. ASP.NET Core is a cross-platform or the high-performance open source framework for building the modern cloud-based and the internet-connected applications. Second is the Entity Framework Core is a lightweight, extensible and the open source closed platform among us the popular entity framework data access technology. And third one is the Postgres database. Postgres is a powerful and the open source object relational database system with over 30 years of the active development that has earned a strong reputation in the market. It is reliable, robust and its performance is very high. So let's open the Visual Studio to develop our APIs. So over there click on the new project. Now you have to choose the web API template, ASP.NET Core web API template. Click on it, or you can search it from the bar from here. Type it ASP.NET Core. Here you have the web API template. Choose it, click on next, give it a suitable name, choose the directory, give it a name. Let's give it a shopping app APIs. Web API. So click next. We don't want to HTTPS right now. We don't want open API, just a minimum controller setup, and we are using the .NET 6, that is the latest one. Click on create. Now the first thing we need to do, we need to install the two NuGet packages. One is the NPSQL that is used for the Postgres, and second is the Entity Framework Code tool that is used for the code first approach that we are using. So right click on it, go to the manage NuGet packages, go to the browser tab, type it npg SQL .entity framework core .PostgreSQL. So this is the package. Click on install, click OK, and then the next package you want it for the demo is Microsoft .entity framework core .tool. Click on that, click install, accept the dependent packages. So now we are ready. Let's save our project. Now let's create a folder in which we will generate our code plus classes for the entity framework. EF core. So for the demo we need two classes. First class is the product.cs. Second class is your order.cs. So in the product.cs class, let's design with the table decorator, in which we will mention the table name that will be created in our database. Add the library or namespace for it, and then add the keys. Firstly, the key will be your ID. This is your primary key, so tell the table it is a primary key using the key decorator. that will reside under the system.component.data annotation. Then it is also a required field, and then the next field will be your name of the product, then brand, and then your size, and lastly your price of the product. So these are the table fields that we needed for the product. Similarly, we need a orders table in which we will record our user's order. So for this same we need a key, order ID, that is a primary key of the table, and then you need a namespace, and then the next need is the product ID, for which product you are ordering it. So that will be your foreign key in this table. So add it, virtual product, and then you need a user's name, whose order is this, and then user address, and lastly user phone number. Declare all these properties. Fine. Similar for here, for the string properties, like declare that. Okay, so we are good here. Now next thing is we need to create the data context class. So let's create that. EF entity framework data context.cs. This class will be basically inherited from the DB context, that will reside under the Microsoft.entity framework core class. Now let's create a constructor for this class in which we will initialize our DB context options. This is the options, and this will further inherit it from the base class in which we are passing the option to it. Options, and then you have to create the override method for on model creating. On model creating, you are passing the model builder, and then you are telling model builder dot use serial columns. This will automatically identifies your incremental operations. Now is saying db sets. So now we are adding a db sets tables. First one is our product, and then your orders. Now we are good to go. Strange. Okay, so might be it will automatically take care of the identity. So next step is open your app.setting.json file, where we have to be mention our database connection string. So quickly copy this. So here in this we have to be pass a name of the connection string, then server. I'm using the Postgre as a local host, and then the database name. Let's give it at shopping Flipkart, hosted on the port number 5432, user ID and the password. If you open your Postgre, we have these database. If I refresh it, I don't have it right now. So next step is to configure your application, where you have the builder, add the inject, tell your application that you need to use the Postgres. So here what we are doing is we are adding a service or injecting the Postgres database, and tell them service we have to be used as a database source using the EF core. So I add the required namespaces for the same, and the next step is to run the commands so that our database will be created. So open your package manager console over here. Now here we have to be run the two commands. First we have to be add the migration. So type it add migration and name it as initial database. So you added the migration into the project, so it succeeded. So migrations are added under this folder. Now you have to be open the package manager console window again, type the command update database. The moment you run this command, it will start trying to create the database into the Postgres, and it is created successfully. Now go back to your browser where you have a PG admin open, refresh this. Now you can see our database is created. Open the schema. Now you have the two tables named as order and the product. If you expand these, go to the properties, you have the column created already. Okay, so we have the two IDs. Okay, so basically what happened is it's created the two IDs for us. Basically we don't need this ID because we are referring the relationship here using the product. So what you need to do is open the package manager console window again, go to the migrations. In this way you can update your database also. Update reference, give it a suitable name, add the migration for the same, it succeeded, and then update your database. Now if you refresh it, your database, go to your tables again. Now we only have one product ID. for the reference. In this way we will create our relationship database. So the next step is we need to create two models that we will use for the API communications. So create a model folder. These are the database table that we have created so far. Now we are creating two tables. One is the product model and second one is the order model. These models will be used for communication when we are making a HTTP request to our API. So let's quickly copy the properties for the same. For the order models we have these properties, and for the product model let's copy the properties. Fine. So the next step is to create your API controller. Right click on it, click on add controller. Now we need to create an API. Go for the API option, choose the API controller with read write action, create it over here. Now this will create a dummy method for us for the get by ID, post, put and delete. These are the four common APIs method that we will use in our daily lives. Before we jump into the APIs, let's create a backend that will retrieve the data from the PostgreSQL using the entity framework core and retrieve to these APIs. So let's create a one DB helper class over here, name it as DB helper. So this class basically over here we will write our old database related logic. It might be reside into the separate library based upon the architect that we are following, but for the demo I am creating it in the same library or same project. So firstly we need to declare our entity framework object that we have created, a data context object, add a reference for it, that is context of my database. Now in the DB helper constructor I am passing this database context and I am assigning to it. Now basically what I need to do is I just need to four methods, that is one for getting the product list. So basically let's create a method for it, that is the product model get products. In this what we are doing is we are returning a list of product models, that is our response, and returning this to our API method. So how we can retrieve it? Data list, and this data list will be retrieved from the DB from the products table dot to list. So this will return all the data table, all the product that lives or reside in the products table, and what we have to do with it, let's iterate it and cast it into the product model using the for each loop. So over there what we are doing, we are adding a product into our response model. So firstly is the brand, retrieve it, and then ID, and then name, and then price, and lastly the size of it. So this will serve the purpose of the get call. Now moving toward the post. So in the post call, what we are expecting is, you can say a save order. Save order will serve the purpose. Firstly, let's create the definition. Serve the purpose of the 3 call. It serves the post, put, or patch if you want it. So over here, what you are sending is, you are sending a order model object, and underneath what we have to do, we have to create a order into our database table. So we are initializing the new object, but we are also checking it. If the order model dot id is greater than 0, it means it is a put call, because we are updating our record into our database. So for that we need to retrieve a record first from our database. So how we can retrieve it? We go to the orders table dot where, then we search the order by its id dot equals, from where we are getting the id, from the order model, and we are retrieving the first record of it. First or default will handle the null operations also. Now we check if db table is not equal to null, then what we are doing is, we are updating a properties for it. We are updating a phone number that we are passing into our model, and then we are also update the address, and similarly in the else case, what we need to do is, we already initialize the new object, and in the else case we will start typing or binding the properties. Name of the user, address, name, phone number, and lastly what we need is product. So we need to be pass the product. So for that we need to be find it, id dot equals, from where you can find it, from the order model we need to be add one more property with the name product id, right? So we copy it, order model dot product id, that is first or default, that's it. And now you are adding the record into your products table using the post operation. And lastly, for both, this is your post call, and lastly in your at the end you need to be tell entity framework code to save the changes into the database using the context.savechanges method. So in this way this method definition is completed. So one last method is to delete a order. So what you have to do is delete order, create, you just need to be pass the order ID to it. So firstly what you are doing is you will find an object, name it as bar order, so here you check it is null or not. If it is not null, then what you are doing is you are removing it from the database. The help of remove method, order, and lastly you need to be save the changes. So here our repository is ready. This is used for the post, put and patch. This is your delete, and this is your get. So since our DB class is ready, now we will jump back to your controller. So go to the controller folders. Firstly change the name. Let's delete this. Add a controller again. API controller, read write, and here we will give it a suitable name, shopping API. Hit enter. Now you will see it will create a controller for you. It creates a route for you. Now let's start first by injecting a context into the database, into your controller. So what you need to do is firstly define your object, that is read only DB helper. This will provide access to the database. So in the controller class, in its constructor, what we are doing is we are injecting a entity framework core context so that we can pass it to our class, add a namespace for it. Why we are doing this? We are creating a new object and passing the data context object into the constructor, because in the DB layer we are declaring the context in the constructor and passing to it, so that we don't need to be initialized again and again. It will be only initialized when this shopping API controller will be created. The instance of this will be created. It will automatically pass the context to its DB helper class. So let's start. First let's take a route from here and give it a route over here. So over here you can pass it the suitable name. Let's say get products, and then what you are doing it inside that, first we need to be change a return type of it, action result. Now what we are doing is firstly add a try catch in the method, and then we need a list of product model, right? So this is your response, basically the data that you want to be return it in the response. So call your db dot get products method. This will return the products for you. And then what we need to be do is we need two more classes in the models. folder. What are those? These are your journal API response. So let's create that API response. So why we need these class? Basically in this class we have three properties: public string code, and then public string message, and lastly your public object, that is nullable, and then the response data. This is a journal format of your all the APIs request. These are needed because when you are creating a APIs, it should return a data in a standard format. So one more enum class we need it, public enum, that is your response type. What kind of response you are returning it from your API? So whether it is success, not found, and failure. Fine. You can add as many as you can based upon the need. So let's switch back to the API controller. So over here we have the response class now that we want to be return it. Now what we need to do is we will check this: if data dot any, if our data list has any kind of data, then it is a valid response. Then what we need to do is we need to create a firstly response type. Here we are passing response type dot success. If we not found anything, then this type will be not found. And if you met with any kind of exception, then we don't need to throw any error. We simply tell the API it is a error case. We met some kind of exception, so we will cast that exception in a nice format. So at the end what we need to do is we need to in case of exception return a bad request format with a exception to it. So firstly how we can pass a format or basically a API response to it. Again we need one more class for the same. Name it as response handler. This will handle our all the responses. So in this basically we need two method for it that will take care of every scenario that we have in our API. So let's copy it. So what are those? Firstly add a namespace for it. Okay. Not found, and then your response data. Here you have a message. So let's try to understand the definition of it. What we are doing is we have created one response handler class. In this we have two methods, one for handle the exception, one for handle the valid responses. Whenever we met with some kind of exception, what we are doing is we are passing the exception, passing the code, one for the failure, and response data. In the response data what we are passing it, we are passing a response exception message. You can pass your customized message if you want to. And in case of the valid response, what we are sending is we are sending a type, what kind of response it is, success or not found, and then your contract Contract is basically your data that you want to be pass it to the API. So if it is a success, we will pass the code as 0 for the success and 2 for not found it, and simply we are creating a API response that we will pass to our API's method. So here we are. If we have the bad request, then what we will do, we will call the response handler class that we just created dot we want our exception response, and this for this exception what we have to pass is your exception, and you are good to go. And in case of your success or not found or the valid response, then what you are sending is you are returning a OK response with the response handler class. And in this what we are passing a type of the response, and then we are passing a data object. Simply that it in this way. This is the complete definition of the HTTP GET. In this what we are doing, firstly we are retrieving a list of the products from the database, we are checking it whether it is empty or not, and then we are passing all the data and the response type to the response handler class. This will return a response and send back to the API. That's it, nothing we have to do. Similarly, we need one more method for the get ID. So what we will do, just copy it. In this we are only need one object, so get product by ID. In this we are passing ID. So what we will do, we will create a new object. So basically what we have to do is we need only one object based upon the ID that we are passing. So d dot id dot equals this, you have passed the ID, so we have get the response back. And now what we need to do is return a response. Return new, that is your product model, then we are passing a properties into it. Name it as row. Fine. So in this method we need to be exactly the same. Change the return type of it firstly, and then what we are expecting is we are expecting a single model, not a list. So we will tell get by ID, that ID will be passed from the URL that we are passing it, and then we are checking data not equal to null, equal to null, then we change the type of it, and then we are passing the data to the response handler with the appropriate response type. In this way our type will be completed. Actually we are not using it in the exception model. So in this way get by ID method is completed. Only thing is pending is we need to be update its route. So get product by ID and then your ID. Remove this from here, it is a get call again. Now moving toward the post call. Similarly for the post call, update its route, give it a suitable name, save order. Now in this order, what we are expecting is we are expecting a product model. Now change its type. In this, firstly we have to add the try catch, update its catch block with a suitable exception handling, and then in a post call, what you need to be do is you need to be call your DB helper class, save order model. That's it. In the model class, what is expecting a order model, and we are passing to it, and then we will return a OK response to it. With the appropriate data, and that's it. Let's see what it's saying. So it's saying shopping.webapi.model. Yeah, we pass it. Order model class. Oh, we are passing a product model, so we need to be pass it the order model to it. So that it's in this way. You can see finding the appropriate response type, passing it. If it is successful, it will return your OK response, otherwise it will return a exception for the same. Similarly, for the put, update a route, update order, again for updating a order we are passing a model object to it. So in this way you can see we are using the same definition. So the question here arises, can we use post in case of update also? Yes, we can use it, but you need to be use the post verb in your API method. Post can serve all the purpose for updating, creating, deleting or get. It will retrieve all the responses, or it will serve all the purposes for you. So over here this is our update call, and lastly for the delete, update the delete route, delete order, and here we are passing ID. So over here you are adding a try catch, updating a catch block to handle the exception, and then you are calling your API method. Change the return type of it, delete order, passing the ID to it, and on the data you are passing a null, or you can simply pass delete successfully. So that's it. This will create our last delete API. So our API is up and running. Let's run it, and now open the Postman tool to test that. This is the last step, how we can test our APIs. You can test it by your various tool. RESTman API, so I am using a Postman tool. So let's firstly dump some data into your table, product tables, let's select it, and we will see we don't have anything. So let's first product 1 and then brand, let's say brand 1, and then size 1, and price is 100. Two, product 2, similarly brand 2, and lastly the size and the price. So now we have two record into our database. Now make a get call. So what is our route? So which port they have hosted? So they are hosted, you can see, on the 5054 port. So 5054, your controller name, and then method name, and this is a get call, and we are adding one header, content type application JSON, in which we want to be communicate with the API, and hit send. Now you can see you have a nice formatted API response with the code 0, response message success, and the response data with the list of the product. So this is a get call. Second, we will try to insert a record into the orders table. Same, let's copy the controller name, and then your method name, and then on the body you are passing the parameters for the order. What are they? They are ID, basically a 0, then we are passing a product ID. Let's say we want to create it for the ID 1, and then a name, and then the address. On the address, let's say passing your city, you have to, and then lastly your phone number. Now if I add a breakpoint into my API here, this is a post call, and I update the port 5054, hit send. You will see a request came over here with the data that you are passing it on your request body, and we go to the DB helper class, we check that, oh, we have to be stop code over here. What we need to do is we need to be pull that outside of the if, because this is a post call. So let's run the API again. So now again try to make a call, go to the DB helper class, we check the ID 0. Now we try to insert a record into the database. It successfully inserted it. You can see the response 200. Okay, now if we quickly go to our database for the PG order class, select it, you will see inserted record into this. Now if you want to update this record as a put call, what you need to do is convert it into the put, go to your controller, copy its method name, and now what you need to do is you need to be pass a ID for it. Now add a breakpoint over here. You will see call over here, but this time ID is also coming. So let's go to the DB helper class. Now you can see it is entering into the update method. Now we updating the two properties. We have used the same properties. Now the phone number is this. Let's try to update this. And what we are updating? We are updating a address field. Now I am updating the address. Quickly check our database also. So this is the latest address and the phone number. Now I hit send again. Breakpoint comes. Go to the DB layer. It updates the two fields. Return the response. OK 200. Now we will check our DB. You will see it is updated successfully. Now the last call is the delete call. So what you need to do is simply go to your address tab and pass the method name for your delete and passing the ID to it. Now it is a delete. And for the headers we are adding a content type application JSON. Add a breakpoint over here. So you will see breakpoint comes, we go into a DB layer, we find the record, we removing it, we save it, and it says delete successfully. Quickly check your database. Now you will see your database is empty, record is successfully updated. In this way you will create your APIs and you test it using the Postman. Thanks for watching. See you in the next session. Bye.